it was Paul Heyman. Hey, Paul, we talked for a minute. He says, hey, Fonzie, listen. He said, you just left WWF. You're still on TV practically, because they tape a lot of Monday Night Raws and put them in the can. They would do one live show, tape two. One live show, tape two. They did that until they went live every Monday. So he says, you're still on, he says, I got this idea. I got this company in Philly. It's called ECW. I said, ECW? What the fuck's an ECW? Because I've never worked an indie show in my life. I'm not familiar with any of it, And he said, oh, I got this, this little company. He said, I got this idea. Would you come up for 4 weeks? Don't worry, I'll pay you good. I said, I'm not worried about the money. He said, I'll pay you. I'll fly you up at your hotel. And you're in and out in 4 weeks. So just work this little angle because you're fresh out of WWF, and it'll make sense when you get here. I'll tell you more. I said, okay. So I get my plane ticket for Friday, and I fly up. I go walk in the dressing room. I got a fucking beautiful suit on. I got Louis Vuitton luggage. I'm wearing a Rolex. I walk in. There's a Sandman smoking a cigarette. There's Tommy Dreamer fucking talking to fucking whoever. There's Taz, or Monkey Boy, whoever the fuck he was. There's Mikey Whipwreck. There's all these characters that were very cool, but I didn't know not one of them. I'm used to walking in the dressing room, and there's Sting and the Steiners and Bruno Sammartino and Lex Luger and Jim Crockett and Dusty Rhodes and Terry Allen. That's who I'm walking in the dressing room with. So, but these guys are his stars, and they are some. Most of them knew me because if you're in the indie circuit, you know a lot about wrestling. So they knew me and put me over. Hey, Fonzie, how you doing? So I came in there to be anti-violent. You know the story, kind of. Referee with a bow tie. Vince McMahon wants the doctor and his wife and the 2 kids at ringside. You don't want 32-year-old guys fucking in the audience yelling, you fucked up. You know what I mean? So they brought me in to be anti-violent and to be more family-orientated and me try to stop the violence in ECW, and it got over. People hated me for it. There was a Taipei death match between Ian Rotten and Axel Rotten that the people had paid big money to see, and they've been building this match up for weeks. It's where they tape their hands up, dip it in glue, dip it in glass, and then they beat the hell out of each other in the ECW violent kind of way. So I was the referee for that match. So the first little trinkle, I mean, it looked like a scratch. You know how they bleed in ECW. The first little blood, I stopped the match. I said, due to the blood and the opponent's eye, lack of vision, I'm stopping the match. The people wanted to. I had to get a police escort out of that building, brother. Believe that. So the thing got over, which Paul Heyman didn't expect to get over so much, but the character got over and the angle got over. Wow, this angle is really going good, and it was a natural thing for me to go into the managing thing. That was Paul Heyman. We didn't have no idea that the thing was going to take off in such a manner, and 5 years later, I was going to be beloved and had one of the best spots in ECW history as manager of champions with Van Dam and Sabu and Taz and so on, and had a lucky spot and did really well. And made good money and worked 2 days a week, so it fit me perfect. I had just come off the road working 7 days a week for years, and to work Friday and Saturday, are you kidding me? And to make reasonably good money, even though all that bullshit about bad checks and all that bad shit, I never got one fucking bad check in my life. There was a few guys that, I had to struggle for their pay and sometimes, but you got to remember we had no corporate sponsors. ECW was on his own. We were the black sheep of the wrestling industry, even though Vince was stealing our talent, so was WCW. They were poking our talent out, but we were, I don't know exact figures, but ECW was making $14 million a year, but spending $16. So, that's how the demise. That's how, we had to divvy up the money. Everybody didn't, we got paid as we went. We were trying to build a brand, and which did. We built a great brand. and I was happy to be a part of that. Paul Heyman let me be involved in it, and I was so thankful, and I love Paul dearly for that. Thank you, Paul Heyman.
That was great, though. At first, the troubleshooting, the enforcer referee, like the anti-ECW referee, they absolutely hated you. You feuded with Todd Gordon, you guys, which was hilarious, just because it's like these two non-wrestlers are going in there and they're killing each other. And then obviously you get stripped of the reffing duties, become the manager. But kind of just talk about that at first, as far as feuding with Todd Gordon and having these crazy matches and wrestling all over the place. You think that was just an awesome experience for you?
Yes, it was an awesome experience. I was lucky in the way that, Todd Gordon and I are still dear friends to this day. I talk to him once a week or more often than that. I just text him today and send him some picture of my, got a new T-shirt, Daddy. If anybody's interested, go to Bill Fonzie Alfonso on my social media, baby. My Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can follow. You can go see the shirt. Check it out. It is a badass shirt, and it is RVD approved, Daddy. You're gonna love the shirt. So anyway, Todd, I sent a picture of Todd and of the shirt just to get his approval, and he said pop. He just texted me back and said pop. So I popped him. Got a big pop out of it. And so he liked it. So Todd Gordon and I are really good friends to this day, and I was so lucky. And it probably had to do with my professionalism and my background that they accepted me. But then I was actually pretty cool to be around too, So all that being blended and all the stars aligned, I got along so good with everybody. And Todd Gordon, he did beat my ass because he's not a wrestler. He is a businessman, So once he get in the ring with me, he didn't know how to throw a working punch that good or give me a backdrop properly or do a clothesline. He used to beat my ass, and I used to rip him all the time. He said, Todd Gordon, you beat me up so bad I can't fucking open my jaw to eat for fucking 3 days. And he'd laugh at that. We had a good run. Everything I did, I was so lucky. It worked out, and it kept my job.
You got to love ECW doing things so differently. Like you said, having a businessman and an ex-referee, becoming a manager, having these crazy matches, but the crowd was into it. I mean, they loved your matches. They were going crazy for you guys.
Thank God that they accepted it, because if they didn't, I wouldn't have stayed there 5 years. If they didn't like what Paul Heyman was producing and putting out, the wrestlers would not have lasted. If Sandman wasn't the Sandman, didn't have that fantastic intro with the beer and the cigarette and the cane and all that stuff, and Tommy Dreamer, everybody had a gimmick, and it was all getting over. What can we do? Hey, can you hear me okay? Because it started to rain, and I'm in my convertible, sitting top convertible, bouncing off, making noise. So I'm afraid you running some interference. But you can hear me fine?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, what was I talking about, Daddy? I had a couple concussions, so I forgot.
You basically being the crowd was enamored with you in ECW. You said you lasted there 5 years.
Yeah. So I was very lucky that the crowd accepted me, and for one reason they accepted me is because of my background, because I was, reputable. I had worked for these major companies, and all those people were smart marks. These people knew about fucking wrestling. Plus, they loved the ECW hardcore. Plus, Paul Heyman turned me hardcore. I didn't know I was hardcore until I got into the ring and was watching all these guys. I mean, I was in sports entertainment with Vince and Ted Turner, and Florida was a little kind of like ECW, but not that way, not that hardcore stuff. But it was crazy, and I adapted to it. I guess if you're good and if you're talented, which I was lucky that you could adapt to any situation, and that's what I did. And it was well respected. Even, for instance, about the same guys at ringside at the ECW arena that would spit on me and call me a motherfucker or something would buy me a cocktail at the bar at the Marriott after the matches. You know what I mean? So they'd get carried away. Blow that whistle up your ass or whatever. You know what I mean? I didn't like the whistle at first, but then I liked it because if you didn't know who I was, oh, you that motherfucker who blows the whistle, okay. But very good. And I had one. Well, this is what Paul Heyman in WWE says. I don't say this. They say it. Paul Heyman says it, and WWE says because it's been on multiple DVDs that you buy from WWF, like Blood Sports, and there's 4 or 5 different DVDs that Vince puts out. So Paul Heyman's narrating the tapes, you know. They show the barbed wire match between Terry Funk and Sabu, and that was a pretty hardcore match. You know which one I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
It's notorious. People are still talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And, of course, I was there. So they showed that whole great match between Terry and Sabu, and where Sabu gets his bicep almost ripped apart, you know.
Born to be wired, yep.
Go get me some tape. So I run back to the dressing room. I bring him the tape, and he's taping his cut up that's like 18 inches long or 15 inches long and an inch or 2 wide from the barbed wire. He's taping it up while taking the reverse neck breaker from Terry Funk onto a steel chair. Incredible. So that was a really hardcore match. So we had to cut him out of the barbed wire after the match and the title switch and all that, so on and so on. So that match shows. And then in between matches, there's a commentation from a WWF superstar. And it's Paul Heyman. He says, well, we didn't know how we were going to follow that match, but my God, we swear we're never going to have a match like that again. It was too violent. But you guys remember Fonzie? Bill Alfonso? He had the most 5 intense minutes, not in just in ECW history, but in professional wrestling. Then the tape rose, and there's me and Beulah. But they put it over as a spectacular thing. I think it was good, and the blood helped a lot. People still ask me, and they ask Beulah all the time because I still talk to her a lot about the match.
That is Paul Heyman's favorite match, supposedly, from ECW that he always talks about, you and Beulah, and you losing all that blood.
Yeah, if he says, give me 5 or 10 of your favorite matches, he might say this match, that match, and I'll be included in that match, in that list, I would think.
There was a lot of loss of blood and very memorable because the crowd is nuts for it as well.
Yeah, and somehow we pulled it off. We were so lucky. I mean, we were 2 non-wrestlers. I didn't wrestle that much.
Mm-hmm.
I wrestled a little bit here and there, but Beulah hasn't wrestled at all. She's a fucking penthouse centerfold spread and a movie star in her own right. And so put 2 non-wrestlers in there, and we didn't, rehearse or practice our match for days, or we just talked a little bit and went in there and did our shit. And luckily enough, it happened,
Very memorable, and when Heyman says it's one of his favorite matches, I mean, that just puts the stamp on it, and obviously gets a lot of people talking. Even now, people still talking about that match, and it is crazy because you're not a wrestler, like you said. Obviously, she's not a wrestler, but you're able to do that. Is that blood kind of, even looking back, is it a little scary? There was a lot of blood lost in that match.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely scary. Not at the moment, but after I look back at it and, after hours after the match, so this is what happened. She hits me with that 10 sheet, bam, and I get big juice, I get busted wide open, and the 10 sheet hit me at exact perfect place. We could never redo that move again. It was just the luck of the Irish that we were so good. And every time this happened, like 25 seconds into the match, boom, I get busted open. And so I said, okay, I feel a little blood coming down, and it kept coming down more and more and more and more. And then every time my heart would beat or I'd pick her up, I'd, it'd pump out and shit. By the time half of the match is over, I mean, we're both soaked, and I got a black shirt on. I mean, I lost so much blood, and then I'm hanging upside down, taking a steel chair and doing the whatever what the fuck we're doing. It was fucking crazy. So the 1, 2, 3, and I still didn't realize how bad the gash was because it ended up getting rushed to the hospital because the paramedics backstage couldn't really stop it. So they ended up putting a cold steel plate on my head, putting that gauze around it, and rushing me in an ambulance to the nearest hospital with head trauma. And, of course, they take me right away because head trauma, they take you first. No bullshit with head trauma. So they took me in, and I tell the nurse, she starts to unwrap my head. I say, hey, I wouldn't do that if I was you. She said, oh, shut up. This is on a Friday night. She tells me to shut up. She says, oh, shut up. I've been a nurse for 22 years. I know what I'm doing. I said, okay. So she takes the gauze off and the cold plate, and it squirts all over her blouse, white blouse and shit, like if you squeeze a bottle of ketchup. I loved it. And she pushed the button, and a bunch of people ran in there and were holding my feet up, and a guy comes in there with those jumper cables that they start your heart with and shit. I said, what are those for? He said, oh, just in case. I said, holy shit. So end up that somehow I severed nerves and an artery. I didn't have feeling on the top of my head for like at least 6 months. I could comb my hair and not feel the comb going through my head, you know? So finally came back. Beulah called me every day. Oh, how are you, Fonzie? She called me every day for a month, sent me flowers and all kind of stuff, cards. Oh, Fonzie, I'm so sorry, but we stole the show. Oh, I'm sorry, Fonzie. How you feeling? She was such a sweetheart. I love Beulah.
Scary, scary stuff. Were you, a little nervous or maybe even scared for your life at that point with all that blood loss and all that stuff going on?
Well, no. Actually, no. Because I didn't realize I was so hyped up. I was so into the ECW game. I was so into the character. I was so into the hardcore stuff. I was so into not letting any of the guys down. Now, the wrestlers bleed every night. Sandman's head gets busted open every night. Tommy Dreamer bleeds every night. Raven bleeds every night. Fonzie's going to complain about bleeding one night with Beulah. Oh, my God, I look like a big pussy. So I would never say nothing. So the doctor, after they stitched me up like 27 stitches inside and outside of my head, inside, I don't know what they did, but they had to stitch some artery or some fucking vein, whatever they did, and then the thing dissolves inside your head, and then the staple here, the staple there. It was crazy. I didn't think nothing of it. So they wanted to keep me in the hospital for a couple of days, at least overnight, for assessment. I said, fuck no, I'm leaving. They said, okay, you got to sign a waiver if you're leaving. He said, here, sign this waiver. We recommend you don't smoke, don't take a pill, don't have a cocktail, don't do nothing, don't fly, don't do nothing. I said, okay, thank you. I walk out of the fucking emergency room. Oh, they wheel me out in a wheelchair. I stand up there as a Sandman. He's got a 44-ounce cocktail for me. He's got a joint going. I take a fucking pill, and we'll go back to the fucking hotel and party. Then I catch a plane home the next day. That, when I felt it, when I got home, I said, oh, my God, because my head was numb, and I was moving kind of slow. But that night, I didn't care. But I did feel it. I said, damn, what did I go through? The guy said, he said, you lost 33% of your blood, I don't know how that happens, and you still survive, but that's what I remember, Yeah, I was scared at the end, but I look back at it and say, damn, that could have been a death thing, because look what happened to Chris Candido.
Mm-hmm.
He got hurt, and they said, don't get on a plane, and he got on a plane, and I think the fucking thing went up through his heart and killed him, I think.
And it's crazy. We do a show with Shane Douglas, and he was saying that he's just shocked of all the craziness that Candido did. Like, that's what got him. Like, that's how he ended up passing away. Like, he lived a crazy life, and that's what got him. Just scary stuff when you think about it.
Yes, and I love Candido. Candido was a talented fucking worker. He reminded me of an old school worker, because he knew all the mechanics, plus he could do all the new shit, all the new ECW stuff. he was good as worker, great as worker as anybody in the business, you know, wrestling wise and all that. A little small, but he made up for it in his work. You know, he wasn't a big, tall guy. Vince liked big guys, but towards the end, Vince didn't take anybody because now look at Rey Mysterio Jr. You know what I mean? Small guy, but Vince always had a tendency for the big guys, but you know, he had to switch over and have multi-sized people who wanted to make it.
So as far as you, and we'll rewind just a little bit in ECW just because I wanted to touch on it with Taz. So, you know, you make kind of a big push for yourself, and obviously Heyman gives you the big push with Taz, and Taz is getting the big push. They put you with him. You guys have great chemistry, but I think the best part is when you actually turn on him and you end up being with Sabu. Was that something that was a really cool moment? Because for the fans, that's a huge turning point. That's a huge feud. That's two of the biggest guys ever in ECW.
Well, nobody expected it, and either did I. I didn't expect it. What, baby? I didn't expect it. Hold on one second, Daddy. Oh, you need me? Okay. I got a girl leaving. Hey, sweetheart. See you later, Daddy. Bye. Bye, baby. It's raining so hard. I'm in my fucking little car, doing the interview, doing this promo, and I'm loving. It's like a promo, and loving it. I got some peace and quiet out here. My house is full of my grandson. Beautiful. Monday Night Football's on and everything. I came out here so I can relax, smoke a cigarette, bullshit with you. The hottest podcast in the country, Daddy. I wanted to be laid back. So she came out here to visit me for a minute, and then she wanted to go back in. So there she goes. And nice. Beautiful, too, Daddy. Beautiful. Oh, my God. So the thing with we were talking about Taz?
Yeah, Taz and Sabu, yep.
Okay. So nobody, I didn't expect it. Paul Heyman didn't expect it. Taz didn't expect it. Is when Taz turned, remember, and I would put me as his manager, and Taz felt like ECW fucked him, all his friends. Fonzie was the only one that called him. And we just clicked and had a great run.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks, baby. Oh, she brought me an umbrella. But that's to get out. It is storming, brother. So, anyway, so nobody expected it. I didn't expect to have that big, long run with Taz. And then Paul would play it by ear on how he ran the show. You know, he had a format, and I'm sure he had things he wanted to do in the month from now and so on and so on. There's long programs that go on a year. But if it was time to go, it was time to go. So, man, with the first night, Barely Legal, the big pay-per-view, I remember like it was yesterday. We were all sitting in the dressing room, and Paul Heyman standing on the steps with Todd Gordon standing right next to him. And, he'd always give a speech. Usually a lot of promoters, including Vince and stuff, gives you a pep talk before the show, and he said, "Hey, welcome to the dance," or "You guys made it," and this and that. I was like, "Wow, great!" And then I got the finish. I didn't really know 100%. I was switching with Taz and against Taz, going with Van Dam and Sabu. I didn't know that until that night, and I didn't realize what a monumental thing that was for that company. And I was a part of that. It was pretty cool until later. Because you know what I mean? It's just another night, a big night. Everybody else so overwhelmed by our first pay-per-view. I've been on hundreds of them, with the different companies. But the first one, this was ECW's goal, is to try to make it, So it was pretty damn cool. And people didn't really say, "What? Okay." And then I, started all over with Van Dam and Sabu. And God bless me, it was the right place at the right time, and it worked with Sabu. Worked. And then Van Dam came in, and I don't know what the chemistry was, but it was fabulous. We were doing funny promos and serious promos, and Van Dam was the hottest thing since, in any company. Van Dam, pound for pound, Van Dam was the hottest kid in the country. I mean, if you would have put him on Vince's Monday night, which they did, I mean, Van Dam's a phenomenal worker. Oh, my God, he is badass. And Sabu is so really hardcore, great worker, but he is one of the toughest guys I know. Like, I mean, pain thrust hoe, and you know what I mean, and don't give a fucking do a moonsault or fucking 747 and land. You know what I mean? Crazy shit. And keep going. Wrestle with a broken jaw or whatever. And Van Dam's really a tough guy. You know what I mean? If I got in a fight, if I was at a strip club and 3 guys wanted to fight me, and Van Dam said, "Hey, Fonzie, I'll take care of all 3 of them," that wouldn't surprise me at all, because he would. He can beat 3 guys up at one time. He is really badass. Fuck, he's tough, man. And he's so cool. He can slap you around in a rage, and you never see RVD in a rage, and then the next second be RVD again. But just making a point, you know what I mean? Like, somebody piss him off. He's so cool. That rarely happens, but it has happened.
When they put you, Sabu, and him together, it is great chemistry, great pairing with you guys. I love it, even with Sabu and RVD, who obviously have a very, very long history. I love the dynamic, though. They're friends. They're training partners forever, but they feuded a little bit. There's a little tension, but then you're in the middle. It was a great pairing. Did you think that was going to be as good of a pairing as it ended up being?
No, of course not. I had no clue what I was doing. I had no clue how we were going to jive in promos. I had no clue how the people were going to accept and react and like the promos and then the joint effort, all 3 of us. I said, wow. And promoters seemed to like it. Paul Heyman liked it. We were getting good feedback from people. And no, I did not know that. It was so cool how it worked out. I can look back. You can pull up some stuff on YouTube, and some of the promos are okay. Most of them are really good. And then there's a few of them that can stand up to today. You know what I mean? It would make sense today. It was pretty cool. When Van Dam was really priming out in ECW, he could do great promos. And then me and Sabu run interference and the whole thing. And it was just fucking cool. It was really, really, and it worked. People were buying tickets, and then were putting asses in the seats, as they would say, the promoter would say.
You know what's great about you is those ECW fans tended to almost cheer sometimes for the heels and almost just kind of go against what you would normally think. It's obviously a little bit of a different organization, the way they ran, the way the fans were smart marks, the way they were. But you were definitely hated. The whistle, the way you talked, the way you acted, you really were such a great natural heel. Did you think you had it in you when you were starting out as a ref and then all of a sudden jumped into that managerial role as a heel?
No, I didn't think I had it in me. I knew I had it in me to be a manager in some capacity. I had been around the business. I had been around super managers. I've been around Dusty and all these fantastic, legendary people. And I knew every aspect of the business. I knew how to book a territory, how to hire guys, how to set up matches, how to run shows, how to do everything, how to plan out a week, how to plan out for 6 months, how to run a territory. I knew all that. Every aspect of the business I knew because I had been around it for 10 years, around the biggest companies on the planet that provided sports entertainment wrestling. What's bigger than WWF and WCW? Who's bigger than them? Japan, been there, done that. So I've been around these guys. So for me to be in the management position, Paul Heyman put me in there, I knew I could handle it to a capacity. I thought I was going to be like a different type of manager. I didn't know that what people wanted and what Paul Heyman brought out in me and what I found out that worked the best for me was, and I found it to be the best for a lot of guys to be successful, is to be myself. I amp it up a little bit, like I drank a pot of coffee and snorted a line of speed or something, but I never did that. So I'm naturally hyped. Can't you tell how hyper I am on the phone, kind of talking to you in these stories?
Absolutely.
I'm drug free. I smoke a little bit of cigarette. I don't drink. I'm kind of hyper, so I just hyper that character up a little bit, and it kind of worked. Daddy, and it just kind of worked. And with a little guidance to Paul Heyman, a lot of guidance to Paul Heyman and Tommy Dreamer, they guided my career pretty good in ECW because they gave me stuff what to say, and then they gave me a format and, guided me. So it was pretty cool. So I didn't know I could do what I did. Looking back at it, I said, wow, what a fucking crazy character. People liked it. I had fun doing it. That's the funnest time I had in my whole career working for all the major companies. I mean, not the most money I made because I made fantastic money, but it wasn't about the money. It was a part of building that brand and building that ECW, and I've been a part of that. Now I'm a kind of a living legend, a little bit of one. So that's because I'm affiliated with all that group of people. If you say ECW, name 10 characters, my name's going to come up a lot.